So the third round of the DRC peace talks facilitated by the East African community started in Nairobi with an aim to discuss peace and stability and the disarmament of armed groups in eastern DRC. The six-day talks brought together regional leaders who reiterated commitment to lasting peace in the region. Ayub Abdikadir has more on the EAC-led process attended by President William Ruto.
As instability reigns in Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo, with the conflict displacing thousands of people, the third round of deliberations dubbed Nairobi 3 to restore peace and stability kicked off in Nairobi, seeking to reconcile warring parties. The talks are a follow-up of the inaugural inter-Congolese peace talks that were held in Nairobi. The meeting was attended by the host President William Ruto, Burundi's Evariste Ndayishimiye, who is also the East African Community Chairperson, and representatives from the United Nations and the African Union. The facilitator of the process and Kenya's former President Uhuru Kenyatta gave an upbeat assessment of the situation.
The efforts that we have deployed in the framework of the Nairobi process have indeed yielded positive results. And as we meet here today, I would like to indicate that there are a number of armed groups that undertook to cease hostilities in advance of Nairobi 1, and which have kept their part of the bargain to date.
The talks resolved to identify political process and institutional reforms for disarmament of armed groups, consolidate support for communities for integration, deepen consultations among communities and armed groups, and evaluate modalities of state authority coupled with diplomatic efforts to restore stability. President William Ruto, who hosted the talks, said while diplomacy is the overwhelming priority, necessary military action will be taken where instability continues.
But Kenya reiterates its unflinching support for efforts that support diplomatic and necessary military solutions to the effective restoration of sustainable peace and stability in DRC.
His message echoed by regional leaders including Ugandan President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni and Rwanda's Paul Kagame, who addressed the meeting virtually.
This operation has shown that we have the capacity to deal with these groups in spite of the difficult terrain, the forest and so on.
The primary reason for this persistent crisis is the failure to implement the many agreements that have been reached at various levels and at different times in past years.
The meshwork of the Nairobi and the Luanda peace process to address the Congo quagmire has to be clearly defined with achievable objectives. And while the peace process midwifed by Kenya's former President Uhuru Kenyatta gives it the diplomatic design, the deployment of the East African Community regional forces takes place in new operational and tactical environments compounded by proxies. This as calls amplify for stability, peace and prosperity. Ayub Abdikadir, Citizen TV at the Safari Park Hotel, Nairobi.